Bueno, muy buenos días.
Good morning, my name is Fabián Inthamoussu. I work in the GeneXus development team, iOS generators.
Los usuarios, las empresas y las tecnologías nos desafiaban.
Hemos logrado construir una versión mucho más flexible, más inteligente y más adaptable para cumplir las necesidades que la tecnología hoy nos exige.
Un buen diseño, excelente usabilidad y transiciones fluidas es lo que espera un usuario exigente de las aplicaciones, y eso genera el Evolution 3.
I will tell you about a similar anecdote. Last year, Apple, in order to sell WWDC things, they were selling tickets last year, 5,000 tickets in 2 seconds. So from then on, they had to change their method because it was really crazy. In the development team, I registered there. Willie did so too. And as you know, Willie was the lucky one. I was a bit jealous at the beginning. I thought, okay, I've already been there. And this time, it's Willie's time. So in WWDC, the first event, there's a keynote, very important one with major announcements. And in order to get a good place, there's people queue for several hours. Last year, I was there at 1 a.m. in the morning, and I asked Willie, are you going very early? And he said, no, I'm going late. And he mentioned that he even got a better place than I had. I think he sort of tricked someone into getting a better place than I got. But at a certain point, I received a message from Willie, and he sent me this picture. Our friendship is over, Willie. I want you to know. So let's get to the real thing now. What will I talk about today? First, I will give a brief introduction on the status of the platform and the generator, what's new in iOS and what we need to do to catch up, what's coming, and what things we might take advantage of. So let's move on very quickly. I don't need to tell you that iOS is a platform where developing is a must if you're going to develop for smart devices. What version? Last year, I said that half of the users were already in the latest version. Last month, before iOS 08 was launched, 95% were already using the latest version. And GeneXus versions that we have since last year are already compatible with iOS 7. And we have been adding features through this year, and some are still pending, such as silent push notifications and some others. One that was still pending last year and which we are introducing right now is a beacon technology. This solves the problem of knowing at what distance I am from a certain point when I get into a region or when I leave a region. In order to implement this in GeneXus, we created a new API called Location API that has a series of properties and methods. But let me first has a series of properties to control the hardware availability for using the API so that you can use it in the device you're running it. Then beacons lets me know when I get into or leave a region. It has elements in the API. One example of that is that in the event application this year, we've used this API on the screen, and some of you might have noticed that when you got to Radisson, there was a welcoming message saying welcome to Radisson Hotel, etc. This was used also on the lunch break, and you were able to see an application with the restaurants that you had nearby. So that's what the API for the event was used for. We're also trying to solve the ranging issue, that is to say, at what distance I am from a certain beacon. We were not able to include this feature in the event, but maybe we could know to what room I'm closer right now, and so how can I see it differently on the screen. Then I have another feature whereby a device can behave as a beacon. It can emulate a beacon. In order not to have another beacon hardware, you could have the iPad behaving as a beacon. This will be available based on Evolution 3. Next one. What happened with present applications in iOS 8? If your application is generated with the upgrade 1 of Evolution 3 or upgrade 6 of Evolution 2, you will have no problem whatsoever. If it was generated with a prior version than the ones I mentioned, in the beta period, we detected a problem. So if your application is using depickers, it will have to be regenerated. This is just a brief description of the present state and what do we need to do in order to stay up to date. As I said, iOS 7 adoption was really huge, and same thing has happened with iOS 8. It went public. It was made public a month ago, and many users had already changed into this. So we really need to support this latest version. In order to start supporting iOS 8, these are the most important things. First, very recently, we only had 2 screen sizes, 3.5 and 4 inches, but then we have 2 new sizes, 4.7 and 5.5 inches. Plus, there's a higher density in terms of pixels on the screen. Also, the larger device, it's more likely to be used in landscape mode by users, because so when you develop applications, you will need to bear this in mind, because it will probably be used in this landscape mode. For this, you will have different navigation styles. The split mode will be supported for iPhone, and you will also be able to create totally different layouts for this device. We're also you used to have 2 screens, and we're adding 2 new screen sizes. You won't have to do things like this one. What do I need to do in GeneXus to support these 2 screen sizes? They work the same way. We have platforms, and we have already predefined all the Apple devices existing today. Second thing you need to do is you need new icons and new splash themes for new resolutions. And something we did was, since we had n properties for each resolution, we got them all together into one. And there, by doing that, you have all the resolutions ready. And as I said, iPhone 6 Plus has a higher density as 1OX had. So now for this, you have to include 3X in the image object. Within any image instance, you can specify the density. What other changes do we have in iOS 8 which are requirements that we need to take into account? There were 2 changes in terms of permission changes. One in local notifications. This is the counterpart of remote push notifications. In iOS 8, they are gathered in one concept, which is user notifications, and you are requested permission for each alert. This is automatically solved in GeneXus before using the first API. We are the ones who ask for permission, but there are some scenarios where you can do that manually. For this, we have added a US permissions method that will ask for permission in an anticipated way. For one example of this is, for example, in the Beacons API, when you get into a region, that event can be triggered when the application is not running in foreground. If you're not in foreground, you could ask for permission through this. Another change in terms of permissions is that in iOS 7 we had one type of permission to know about location services. Based on iOS 8, permissions were split into two. There's one concept which is called always, that allows me to use location services at any time, and another permission is when in use, which means that I can use location services when the application is running or initiated them when I am running them. Something else that was done is from iOS 8, we need to include a description in order to explain why our application will want to use those services. In GeneXus, what you will have to do is, with location services, you will have two properties in main within the section permissions within the group iOS, where you will find a message to be added for always and another one for when in use. You just have to add a description there as to which one you will be using. Something to comment that might be useful for you is that we added the possibility of having beta testing in iOS, so you don't need to add a list of devices to your account for that. You can have that beta testing process. And the second news is that in the store, before you could only have screenshots, and now you can have a video of up to 30 seconds about the application. So that was a very brief and quick introduction about what you have to do in order to stay up to date. And now let's see the most fun part in terms of what's coming. In iOS, last year I told you that the pillar of iOS 7 was the redesign of the user interface. From iOS 8, the pillar is extensibility and integration. I will talk just about some of the news. First of them is app extensions or extensibility. This allows you to interact among applications. I will only mention the three over there, which is the first being share, which allows us to share content with some services. For example, I have a social application where I can share content, and my service can be exposed to other applications. Second type of extension is the action type. This allows us to either see or manipulate content by a third-party application. One example would be my application could translate text from one language to another, and this service could be invoked from another application. The third service is today. This allows us to see content in a very quickly way or perform an action in a quick way. These are widgets that appear, and these extensions could appear that way. Then we have Touch ID, which is the Apple fingerprint detector. This last year was only done by some certain Apple users, but now we can have it in two scenarios. First, you can request the fingerprint before changing a screen. Another API possibility is to be able to store data in a safe way, and I can only read it when the user adds a fingerprint. So this would allow me to solve cases as when I want to confirm a purchase order, I can send secure data so that it is requested this way. Then we have new health kits. This is a place where we can integrate data, health data or exercise fitness data. This is a centralized database for health data, so that in the case of PC Book, which was done by Nicolas, you could use this technology for keeping centralized data. Then we have HomeKit, which is the introduction into domotics from Apple. And with this, we can communicate with accessories or control them through the iOS. There's an applet that can be used with a Siri too. Then we have Handoff. This is interesting. Handoff allows me to begin an activity in a device and then continue it in another device from the same user. Example, you can start writing an email on the iPhone. If you see that it will become too long, then you go to your iPad and continue writing it from there, and you send content from one device to another. This case in particular could be implemented almost automatically in GeneXus, because we already know this. We have we have transactions, we have work with in GeneXus, and we already know what the user is doing. So this could be done automatically by GeneXus. Changes in terms of user notifications. This is the union of remote or local notifications. Up to iOS 7, they were seen like this, depending on the context. But in iOS 8, besides from having a default action for notification, there's a capacity for having N actions, and depending on the context, some of them will be seen. Here, I might have up to 2 actions on the block screen. Here, up to 2 actions per notification. In terms of banners, up to 2 actions. And if this presented in a mode type, there's a button for options where I can have up to 4 options. Next one, Apple Pay. If you were in Elias' presentation on Monday, you might have an idea of what this is. It has 2 flavors. One, when I go to pay in a physical place, this is available with Touch ID through the fingerprint reader. And the most interesting thing for us as applications developer is that there's another API to do that within our own application. So what's the difference between Apple Pay and in-app purchase, which is an application you already had? In-app purchase is thought for enabling content within our application or selling content within our application. Apple Pay is oriented to selling physical items outside the application. You can see some headphones over there, or you could be selling tickets to a certain place of membership, to a health club, or something that's externally oriented. Next one. In the Apple event, there was the introduction of the Apple watches was announced, and this will be available only next year. We didn't receive many information about what can be done. There are no public SKAs yet. Many things are already available on the phone. You can, for example, hand off. You can start doing something on the watch and continue it on the device. For this, there will be an SDK, and we knew some of the things that could be done. First of them is glances, the possibility of quickly seeing brief information from the application. The second one is about notifications, the possibility of being able to respond to notifications from the watch. And then the third part is to build applications on the watch itself with this SDK. And finally, we have Swift. What is it? Apple used until this year a language called Objective-C, which they had used for a long time, but it had many defects. So they made a new programming language called Swift, which has many advantages, but has the disadvantage that you will have to learn a new language. When I saw this announcement, I remember the faces of the people who were listening to this announcement. These are the young people, and they were told you will now have to learn a new language. They were all very sad. But the older users who knew the advantages of Swift, look at their faces, how happy this man was. This should be your face because you're using GeneXus. You don't have to learn everything again. You will be able to use all Swift advantages without having to learn how to use it. So to sum up, iOS today has been widely adopted in its latest versions and latest upgrades, which are totally compatible with iOS 8. However, there's a need for updating to that last version, so in the next version you will have that possibility. And we will be creating many things to make this easier for you. Thank you very much.